I think you can compare this to dating. Everybody wants to date a supermodel, and you always have all these things that the perfect person, and in your mind, maybe all these different things. So what's most important to me? I need someone who's
Yeah.
hardworking. I need someone with good values. I need someone who's going to fit with our culture. And you go down your list, and you may say, okay, well, this person doesn't do a lot of surgery. Okay, well, I can deal with that. I've got other busy surgeons in that office. So because of that, I'd be happy to take someone who doesn't do as much surgery, maybe is non-surgical, because they still can see the patients I need to and hand them off. So is that as important to me as having somebody who doesn't want to work hard?
Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode of the Podiatry Legends Podcast. With me today is Dr. Patrick McEneaney, and he's been on, this is his sixth appearance. He is from the Northern Illinois Foot and Ankle Specialist, and when Patrick was back on here way back, he only had a couple of clinics. Now he has 16 podiatry clinics. So Patrick, welcome back onto the Podiatry Legends Podcast.
Great talking to you again, Tyson.
I tell you that it wasn't, I think your last episode you were on here was July 2023. So it's been 16 months.
Yeah, and a lot's happened during that time.
Time flies. And if people are watching the video and they notice I've got the Chicago Bears hat on, that's because I removed this for Patrick's head in Chicago. I swapped you out for a Roosters hat.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
the
still
Sydney
have that. I love
Roosters.
that hat.
It is a fantastic hat. And all the people that are listening to this in Australia, I know you're all Sydney Roosters fans, so you're all jealous. So when you were on last time, I think you had 14 clinics maybe. So you've added two
Yeah,
more. I think that was around August.
yeah. I picked up a practice of a colleague of mine, and we've integrated those into our practice, and we're working on continuing to build up what had been started with those two practices. I was lucky to pick up some good doctors to take over those offices. And we've been building out it's always tough. You get new staff and you have to integrate them into your way of doing things when
Yeah.
the practice may have done things a certain way. And you got to be careful that you don't try to change everything overnight, because staff gets panicked, and we're the evil empire that comes in and starts trying to change the way they're doing things and says you can't be on your phone all day and you need to be doing this and this. And so it's often a change for the employees.
Yeah, I know when I sold my practice, before the ink had dried on the contract, when I did the final little dot, they had ripped the signs off the building, had put their own signs up, destroyed all the stationery, brought in all new stuff. And the staff, I will admit, the whole team that was there were just like, what the hell is going on? And they just came in and just dramatically changed things overnight. And everyone eventually just jumped ship. No one was left there.
Well, and it's interesting because there's thoughts behind that. So some people like to do that when they come in to say, hey, look, I'm in charge now. This is my practice. It's my name. We're doing things my way.
Yeah.
And it sends a message to the staff. And so in some instances, I like that idea of just because you can get fighting from staff. Well, that's not how we used to do it, or I'm just doing it the old way. And so by doing it, by doing kind of a ceremonial change of something, it puts that in perspective. So I've
Yeah,
got a
no.
friend, Kevin Gray, and when he takes over an office, first thing he does is he paints one of the walls his color.
Okay.
And what happens then is he tells everybody like, hey, this is mine now. And you don't have to change everything overnight and just like literally come into a different office. But by doing something, it tells people that, hey, I'm in charge now. We're doing things my way.
Yeah, and I think it also depends too. If I bought a practice and I was going to work in there as the owner, that I bought it from another podiatrist and all the existing team were there, I would want them to know right up front, I'm the new owner. The old owner is no longer here and things are going to change. And I would probably make a couple of really just minor changes quickly so they know that, okay, this is a new owner. But I think when I sold mine, it was to a corporate and they just came in overnight and just
Well,
ripped the
well, when they
guts out
come
of it.
into something, when they come into something they consider a completely different office, then they feel like they're almost being kicked out.
Yeah.
And so there's a happy medium here where you make some firm changes immediately, but you don't try to change the whole place overnight.
I think they learnt. I do think they learnt from it over a period of time that it was much easier to make subtle changes over a period of time and then slowly bring the new business into like under their wing.
And no matter how you do it, some employees aren't going to do well with it.
Yeah.
But you buy an office that has 7 employees and one person's top dog. You have the office manager who's top dog. Now there's 4 people in my organization. There's 4 people ahead of her now. And some of them just can't do it. They just can't not be in charge when they've been in charge, and they're not willing to work with a team. And I've seen people self-sabotage. You have people, you sit down, hey, we're going to keep you in charge of all the things you're in charge of within this office. We're going to do this for you. We're going to do this. There's room to build up to this position later. And you set this pathway that I look at and I go, wow, this is going to get you more money and in a better position over time if you do what you're supposed to. And the people just are negative and have a self-fulfilling prophecy that they're going to get fired, or a self-fulfilling prophecy that you don't want me here. And they wind up leaving when that wasn't the plan. It's just that they had this contrived notion of what was going to happen.
Yeah, I like it, is that the self-sabotage thing where they think this is going to happen. So they do things because they think this is going to happen. And then it does happen. And they go, well, so knew that was going to happen. Well, it wouldn't have happened if you hadn't done those things. But I've said to coaching clients, it's exactly the same thing. When you have your business, and say when it's first starting, it's you, a receptionist, might have a practice manager, a very small team. You might be turning over 500,000-600,000. I said, when you go from 600,000 to over $1 million, not all those staff are going to want to go with you because they don't have the mental capacity to be in a practice that to get that turnover, you've got to add in additional staff. And some of them just don't want to be it. They'd rather be at a one or two person operation.
Yeah, and it has to do with how people have relationships, what their goals are, what their capability is for social interaction. Some of them like it when there's only 3 people in the office because they have 2 other people they like, and then they don't have to worry about anybody else new coming in and messing that up. I think a lot of times us as owners, you may not realize that this is my business, but to them, it's a big social outlet. And if all of a sudden they're used to having everybody there and everybody plays nice and everybody gets along, and now all of a sudden somebody else comes in that doesn't fit with their culture, all of a sudden a big portion of their life, which is their work, is just changed now.
I was going to ask you then, so when you're looking at a practice to bring in underneath your banner, you would have a certain culture about your business. So when we were in Las Vegas in October, we went to Zappos. I don't know if you've been there at all. Have you ever done a tour to Zappos?
I have not.
Next time you go to Vegas, because you said you go every year, for a podiatry conference, not to gamble, when you're there for that podiatry conference, block out an extra day and organize a trip to go to Zappos. They're renowned for the best team culture in America or something, business-wise.
Okay.
And I assume there's a culture in your business that when you're looking at another business, there has to be some alignment between it, because if they have a completely different team culture, then there would be a clash.
Well, yeah. And the first thing we like to do is I like to get some of my friendly staff members who are key team members with us. I go in, I meet everybody. I'm the scary guy coming in, changing everything.
Oh, you're scary. If people can't see you, if people can only just listen to you, they can't see the video of you. Well, yeah, you're scary.
So, but what I do though is I leave this last one. We made the announcement. The owner was there. We talked together. I bought lunch for the staff. And then I turned around and I said, okay, I got to go. And I left some of my staff members there. And my HR person was to say, hey, here are all the new benefits you get. My clinic manager was saying, hey, what are your concerns about this? We're going to keep all your hours. We're going to keep it. And so what we do is try to talk everybody off the ledge, because a lot of people right away, they go into this fight or flight response where they're like, I'm out of here. And so you got to pull everybody back, get the emotion out of it, and find out what their concerns are.
Yeah, and it makes total sense. I've never worked for anybody else before. I've only ever worked for myself. But prior to going to university, yes, I worked on a chook farm, but all those sort of casual part-time jobs, completely different. But I can imagine when you've got someone who's working in your team, and as an employer, we don't realize that sometimes their livelihood is in our hands. And if they get nervous, or they think that you're going to let them go, or there's going to be too big of changes and they might get the sack, it could get nerve-wracking for them, especially if they've got bills to pay, they've got children, they've got responsibilities.
And again, that's where connecting them with some of your key people, and key people that aren't just like the people at the top. if you get them key people at their level or a level above them, then they get to explain their experiences. And hey, this
Oh,
has
that's
been a
good.
great place to work. One of the girls said, hey, 2 years ago, I was in your position at the front desk, and now I'm in charge of this and this. And here's how I did this. And I've developed better income, better benefits, a better schedule, all because I've stayed loyal to this company and worked hard.
Do you find it's getting easier as you take over a new practice? Because, like you just said, then you've got staff who have probably been part of other practices you've taken over. And now you've got them selling Patrick to the next group that you're actually taking over. And like you said, they're speaking from experience. Well, this is where I was. This is where I am now. This is where you could be in the future.
Yeah, and that helps a lot. It's just that there's always that small percent of people that are always just going to run no matter what happens.
Yeah.
And so the important thing is to identify those people early, and you try to talk them through it. And if they're going to run, I just usually, as long as they're not acting out, I let things take its course if they're not on board. You can't force people to do stuff they don't want to do.
When we were at Zappos, they said it's like a 4-month process people go through before they become part of the actual team, all this training that goes on. At the end of 4 months, after putting all that time and energy into their training, they offer them $5,000 to leave. So they actually say to them, we've done all the training with you now. You're now officially part of the Zappos team. However, here's a check for $5,000 if you want to leave. And they said something less than 2% of people take it.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
But if you take it, you never, ever get the opportunity to work there again. So it's a one-time offer. But they said, of course, some people might be in financial difficulty. They need that $5,000. So they will take it purely for that reason. But they said 98%, no, just stay.
Interesting.
I'm not saying that you should do that, Patrick. I'm just I hear some podiatry business owners now go, I'm not going to offer $5,000. I'm sure some of them will take
it. That's good. But that's interesting, though, because if somebody's will jump easily for money, then that may save you money in the long run of training someone and working with somebody who will leave for a small sum of money.
Oh, it's so easy. Like in podiatry, I'm not sure with the United States. Is it difficult finding podiatrists in the United States? Because in Australia, United Kingdom, New Zealand, Canada, they're always saying that they find it really difficult to find podiatrists to come and work in their teams. Do you have the same probably United States, or it's a different topic? It's a different system.
It depends where you're at. So Chicago is a really big area for podiatry. There's a school nearby. There's a lot of residency programs. And there's a school in Ohio. There's a school in Iowa. We got a lot of schools and residencies between those 4 states. And Chicago's an attractive city to live in. So for me, I interviewed over 75 people within the last year for jobs. So is it easy to interview people and find people who want to work in my area? Yeah. I have other people who are in certain areas of the country, and they have a heck of a time finding people because people may not want to move out to rural Iowa, or may not want to move to Georgia or to Alabama, into other areas. And so it really just depends on what part of the country you're in. Now, are there doctor shortages going on? Yeah, there's doctor shortages going on in the US. And so it just really depends on where you're at. Now, out of those 75 people I interviewed, I hired 3.
Oh, okay.
And so just because I'm interviewing that many people doesn't mean that they're good candidates, that they click with us, that I like them, that they like me, that they do want to work in this area, or that I had an opportunity for them.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I talk to a lot of podiatrists and some of my coaching clients, and finding a podiatrist has sometimes been difficult. And I've actually said, you're better to not employ somebody and have the practice running the way that you want it run than just finding someone that can just put a hat on that says podiatrist on top and them doing a really poor job that reflects poorly on your business and therefore poorly on you, or they don't listen, or they cause you headaches. You're driving into work in the morning, you get that sick feeling in your stomach that you just don't want to be in your own business because you don't get on with the team members that are there. So I think you're better to, like you're doing, employ slowly.
I've made mistakes before. I've interviewed people, I've hired them, I've thought they were good picks, and later you find out that they didn't work out, and that they weren't giving the type of treatment that you wanted your patients to get. They were showing up late. They were making patients wait when they didn't need to. They'd come back from lunch an hour late, and
Yeah.
a bunch of patients left because they decided to go do this during lunchtime and not come back on time. And you can't always assume that everyone's going to have your work ethic.
Mm.
And finding somebody who thinks like you do, thinks like we do, is hard. And I just spend a lot of time interviewing people. A lot of time I'll have an interview, and if I'm not sure, I'll interview them again. And then I'll say, you know what? Let's go out to dinner. Let's have a casual conversation. I do whatever I have to do to where I feel comfortable. And I don't just hire people because I need somebody. I'd rather go without than hire somebody who doesn't give me the feeling like they're going to put the effort in that I want them to.
Yeah. Like Pete and Remy,
Yeah, great people.
aren't
Absolutely great people. But it's not
So-
just them. We have a team of 19 doctors right now. And every single one of them, I'd let them treat me tomorrow.
they? Okay,
And so,
that's good.
with big practices, sometimes that's hard to say.
Yeah, I'm just going to point to everyone too when I said Pete and Remy. Remy Statkus was on the podcast, episode 114, and Pete Lovato was on 305. So if you want to go and check those out. Oh, and also mention the episodes that Patrick has been on before if you want to go back and listen to them. And I think you should start at the beginning and listen all the way through the progression of the clinic growth, your business growth over these years has been amazing. It was episode 48, 74, episode 108, 214, and then 279. And 279 was titled Looking Beyond the Numbers. They've all been great episodes.
Well, thank you. I think you know how to pull all the good information out of people that you talk to.
It's funny that, because I was going to ask, are you always in recruitment mode though? Are you always looking, searching around? Because I had another person I was talking to, and they were going to a conference, and I said, well, while you're there, I said, just talk to people, and you'll talk to employees. Are they happy where they're working? What do they like about where they work? What do they not like? I said, even if you don't happen to find someone who's looking to leave, but you're learning from these people and what to do and what not to do as an employer.
Yeah, so I call it my bullpen. I'm always talking to people at any given time. I've got a certain number of people I've talked to, and sometimes they're people. I have a first-year resident who reached out to me and is like, hey, I want to be in Chicago. I've heard about your practice. Can I come and talk to you? I don't need a job for 2 years, but can I come talk to you? Yeah. And so I start conversations with this. But I'm always talking to people, always interviewing people. And I've had people that I'm like, listen, you're great. I don't have a spot for you right now. And I said, but the minute I do, I'll call you. And then 3 months later, we pick up an office and I'm like, hey, I'm ready for you. Come on. And then some of the people then are, yeah, I'm available still. I don't like where I'm at. I'm happy to come. And so because I've done the work ahead of time, it never hurts you to have these conversations. And sometimes people get into a situation where they're like, hey, I don't like what's happening now. Can I come join you? And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I have an opportunity for you. Or I'll set up I'll know that I have someone says, hey, if you get an opportunity in this area, call me.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I'll start looking at people who are in that area and say, hey, are you looking to sell? What's happening? And then once that starts to come through, I go, hey, I got a spot for you now. Come on, join us.
Yeah, I refer to that as digging the well before you need the water.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of people, they go, oh, I'm dying of thirst. Now I'm going to dig a well. I go, well, you're going to be dead before you get that puppy dug. Whereas, and that's what they do with, oh, I need a podiatrist now because my other one left suddenly.
And it's also all the contracting. I can hire a doctor on, and it could take 4 or 5 months to get them on all the contracts everywhere. And so,
oh yeah, different system over there, isn't it?
Yeah, and so
oh, shake your head.
You can have people start working for you, and first month they can't see anybody. Second month they can see one insurance. Next month they can see 3 insurances, and like I said, it's taken 6 months plus sometimes to get everybody on all the insurances that you need them on. And so you have to be preparing all this ahead of time. And if you need someone at the drop of a hat and you haven't even started interviewing, you're going to be hurting for a while.
I never thought about that. I suppose that's the different system over there. In Australia, a little bit different. If somebody came to work with me, we apply for what we call a provider number, which comes through fairly quickly. And then that provider number is sent out to every health fund all at the same time. And it's pretty much very fast.
Sounds like a very smart way of doing things compared to how we do it.
There's a few things we do over here with health fund cards, which, America look very complicated sometimes.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, though, that like no system's perfect.
No.
I've talked to several people from other countries, and I think if one system was perfect, everybody would be doing it.
Switzerland.
Right.
I don't know why I said Switzerland. I just heard they have the best healthcare system in the world. I've read somewhere.
Yeah, they have some of the best health scores for the least amount of money spent.
Yeah, it was something like it was only just something recently I read that their health system is just amazing the way they've got it all set up. So the other thing that reminded me, we talk about dig the well before you need the water. And there's another term that I've said on the podcast heaps of times. It's like a military term where two is one and one is none. Have you heard that before?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so in the military or in the Marines, they talk about two is one is none. And they're talking about whenever you've got a weapon, for example, if you have a gun, they never have just one gun. They'll always have two. So they might have their rifle, they might have a sidearm, but they might also have one strapped to their ankle. So that's more than two. Because if one fails, you can go to the other one. If they don't have just one knife, they might have their main knife, but they might have a secondary knife. They won't have one way of lighting a fire. They'll have multiple ways of lighting a fire because if one fails, they've got the backup one. Whereas if you only have one way of doing something and it fails, then you get nothing. So two is one and one is none, because if you have two, guarantee something's going to go wrong. You've got your backup. Whereas if you're so reliant on just one, I look at it like, do you have two cars at your house?
Yeah.
Yeah. So do we. We've got two cars. And to me, that's a perfect example of two is one is none. Because if you have two cars, and for some reason one of them breaks down or has a problem, you can very easily juggle the one car. If you only have one car and it fails, life is complicated.
Very complicated.
And I think that works with staff members in general, that sometimes you need to have that additional staff member on board that's helping you doing certain things, because if someone's on holidays, if somebody suddenly leaves, you could then rely on that extra person to do more.
And that's where cross training is important too.
Yeah.
Everybody doesn't need to know how to do everything, but you need to have some people, everyone needs to be able to have some extra skills to pitch in if something happens, if someone's out sick, or if all of a sudden you need to divert some effort towards another task. It helps to have your staff trained like that. And so I spend on days where, let's say several doctors are at a conference. Those are days that we'll have meetings and we'll spend time where people will train other staff members in their job. And then on occasion, we just keep touching that to make sure that they know how to do that.
I think it makes perfect sense. When we had our patient and community relations manager, which is sort of my marketing assistant, but she went from a role as a reception to that position. But the best part about it, knowing both roles, that if someone in reception rang up and said, "Oh, I can't come in," their voice is always, "Oh, I can't come in today, I'm sick." That's the voice. No one ever has a normal voice when they're not coming into work. But straight away, I would then say to Sam, such and such isn't coming in today. You've got to take over the reception. Not a problem. Could dive straight in there and do it. So I trained her to do another role. However, she still maintained that original skill, which was really handy. And then her role, well, I knew how to do the marketing side of things if something had to get out, but we also had other people that knew how to do bits and pieces of her role. So I think it's cross-training, I think, is really important.
It is. And what's it's also been helpful for is when you take someone and you elevate them to the next position, because they've cross-trained in a few different things. All of a sudden, when you elevate the position, it's like, well, now I know I can have them manage this and this because they're cross-trained in those three and they know how all three jobs work, instead of having them try to learn that job later.
Yeah. And when it's in a hurry. So what do you do when you have 19 podiatrists that work with you? Do you have a rule in place that only so many can take holidays at one particular time? Or is there certain times of the year you go, everyone can take a holiday because we're closing up for a period of time? How do you manage podiatry holidays? And then if a podiatrist left suddenly?
Yeah, so a couple different questions there. So first of all, like holidays, we do have certain set holidays like Christmas Eve. We usually work a half day and end early. New Year's Eve, we do the same thing. And then there may be some docs that take that day off or the day after Christmas off. And so my clinic manager will sit there and people put in for days off. You don't necessarily get them, you put in for them. Usually we're able to work it out. And so different doctors will take off. And if too many are taking off at one time, we say, hey, we can't accommodate 12 doctors being off today. Yeah. And with conferences, people try to stagger them. And there'll be times that 3 docs are all work in one clinic and all 3 we're going to go. And we're like, hey, can one person go to a different conference instead? And they'll go, oh, yeah, I'll go to a different conference. I'll stay here. And that way I get all the new patients that come in. And so there's really a good team effort with all of my doctors pitching in. Today they were, saying, hey, I can take the day before Christmas for call. Who can grab Christmas? I'll grab the days afterwards. And the nice thing is it's more of like a conversation between them that they work together on it. So I think having
Okay.
that atmosphere where they are being polite and covering for each other and being a real team, I think is really important.
What's interesting though is, and I'll point this out to people listening who are unaware, that you work between Christmas and New Year, don't you?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So in Australia, majority of podiatry clinics, my clinic, we would close up the day before Christmas and we would open up the day after New Year's. No, we'd close up for that 10 or 12-day period. Most podiatrists I know do that. In the
Yeah,
United States, I know you don't.
out by us in America, it's a big difference because a lot of our patients have insurances that they have to pay deductibles into a certain amount a year. And then for not all plans, but a large portion of them, they reset January 1st.
Yeah, so do ours.
And so we'll get a lot of phone calls like, can I get in? I get calls on New Year's Eve right in the morning. I need to get in and get seen. I've met my deductible. I need to be seen today. And
Yeah.
it never fails. So our busiest times of the year are pretty much starting in November and it runs till the end of the year. And it's a sprint all year long. We do our most surgeries in those months. We do a lot of orthotics, a lot of all these other treatment plans because everybody's trying to milk their plan as much as they can before it resets.
Yeah, ours was the same. We would really push from October, November into December, and we had a whole campaign, use it or lose it, which was part of their insurance. If you don't use it by the end of this year, it's lost forever. And then I'd put in there that, and the greedy CEOs like it when you don't use it because they get bonuses and overseas holidays to encourage your patients to use it. But we would say, we're closing on the 23rd of December. So if you haven't used it by then, you've lost it. But the other difference in America too, you only get 2 weeks holiday, don't you? And is it 2 weeks holiday a year?
Well, there's I feel like we're at seven, like is there seven main holidays that the US gets that
Yeah.
are like government sanctioned days? Now, that's for government employees. Our practice picks which holidays we celebrate and which ones we don't. And then, so yeah, there's really, for us, not as many holiday days, but the doctors have their own days off where they get to go on vacation and do what they want to do at their own leisure.
Yeah, because that's when I was in the States this year. We were sitting down talking with a few people about how they employ their staff. And they said, oh, no, holidays are optional. You don't have to give your staff holidays. They get the public holidays, the days off, but you don't necessarily have to say, oh, no, plus you get 2 weeks holiday. It's an optional thing. Whereas in Australia, mutiny, there'd be absolute mutiny if you did that. Over here, I think there's 10 public holidays where they get the day off with pay if they're on wages. And on top of that, 4 weeks paid holidays per year.
Can you cut that part when you play it to the American people?
I know. I tell you, yeah. So when you employ someone, if you employ someone full time, 4 weeks paid holidays per year, plus 10 public holidays, which is another 2 weeks, plus I think it's 10. Oh, no, I think it's 8 public holidays, plus 10 sick days per year with pay. They're allowed to be sick 10 days during the year and they get paid for it, plus their 4 weeks, plus the public holiday. They hardly work.
Yeah.
I remember telling this to Americans years ago and they were going, how do you ever get anything done? They go, well, when we do work, we have to work really hard.
Well, right. You got to catch up on all of it then.
And that's why it's difficult for some podiatry clinics if they've got multiple podiatrists here, multiple staff members, they've really got to be on top of when people are taking holidays. Because if this person can take 4 weeks and the other one can take 4 weeks, if you had 3 podiatrists there, that's 12 weeks that you're not going to have somebody there. So everybody's got to be backing each other up.
And now you need a whole nother doctor.
Pretty much. That's what happens. Once you get bigger, you need to have that extra person because there's always someone going to be on either holiday, a sick day. Public holidays, we don't worry about it. Just don't work.
Yeah.
So Americans work hard.
Yeah, we do.
Oh, another myth I'm going to point out to people while they're listening to this, since we're doing a comparison, that Americans do drink full strength beer, guys. Just let you know that a lot of Australians, for some reason, think American beer is light because it has light, L-I-T, written on it. But I keep telling you, it's light in taste, not light in alcohol. It's still full strength beer. This show is so educational. Oh, totally off track then, but that doesn't matter. Where are we up to? So I'll go back to the original question I asked you. Yeah, you answered the first part of it about the holidays. How do you cope when a podiatrist leaves suddenly?
Yeah, so you never know like why people leave. There's a lot of scenarios. I've seen doctors leave to take care of sick family members. I've seen doctors leave for different opportunities. I've seen doctors leave because of spouses. There's a whole bunch of reasons people can leave besides just being unhappy with where they work. But yeah, the first thing that I do when, if a doctor leaves is we sit down and say, okay, what shifts do we need to cover? And you look at, okay, this doctor's at two clinics. How busy was their schedule? How much of their schedule can be absorbed by the people there? And if the schedule can't be absorbed, do we have nearby clinics that can absorb it? Or
Mm,
do we need to pick up somebody else? And there's been times we've had doctors who there's enough room where other people can absorb it and we don't even feel the difference. Other times it's like, well, this doctor was really busy there. We need to get someone there soon. And so usually what we do is first you try to see if someone's available. Maybe you have a part-time person. We've had part-time people that say, hey, I'll pick up another day for now.
yeah.
Or hey, I've had a doctor reach out and say, hey, I'll take two shifts until you find somebody else. And one time it was 6 months and he was a part-time guy, older and but happy to help out, wanted to be part of the team and say, what can I do to help? So you have to have these backup strategies. And the minute it happens, right away, my team jumps into work and says, okay, they present to me like, hey, here are some possible solutions for what's going on. I've
Oh, that's good.
contacted this doctor, he's available. This one's willing to work a few more hours to pick up those patients, da 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 da. And so we just have to go into our emergency action plan.
I like that.
And
The emergency action plan. That's what you need.
yeah, and then what you do is again, then I go back to my bullpen. Is there somebody available? Is there somebody who might want to be doing this? And then if not, then we got to get heavy out making phone calls, call some people I know. I know people who are residency directors, and I know people who I just reach out to all my friends and say, hey, is anybody looking?
So if you get into that sort of state where you need to find somebody, does your criteria drop a little bit, or are you still at the same mindset? No, if they don't fit our culture, I'm not going to employ them just because we're desperate.
I think you can compare this to dating. Everybody wants to date a supermodel, and you always have all these things that the perfect person, and in your mind, maybe all these different things.
Yeah, that's how I pick
But
my
there's
wife.
certain things, right, right. But there's certain things that was a good answer.
Yeah. No,
So what's most important to me? I need someone who's
yeah,
hardworking. I need someone with good values. I need someone who's going to fit with our culture. And you go down your list and you may say, okay, well, this person doesn't do a lot of surgery. Okay, well, I can deal with that. I've got other busy surgeons in that office.
yeah.
So because of that, I'd be happy to take someone who doesn't do as much surgery, maybe is non-surgical, because they still can see the patients I need to and hand them off. So is that as important to me as having somebody who doesn't want to work hard? And
Mm,
so I think with anybody, there are some doctors I meet and I'm like, wow, you're perfect. Love to have you. You're just what I want. But there's other ones that you meet and you're like, well, this person does this and this. Okay, or this person only wants to work part-time. Well, a part-time person who fits the mold otherwise, why wouldn't I want them in this scenario, especially when I need help?
yeah.
And so again, it's all about give and take. And what I've had doctors that are like, hey, I got to be home. I can work till 3. I can work 9 to 3 because I got to make sure my kids are on the bus and I got to make sure I'm there when they come home. But I'll work really hard during this period in the middle. Well, I can make that concession. I don't need a full-time person if I've got someone who's going to work really hard in the time that they're there.
Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, so you do make a couple of allowances for that. Do you make any changes to the type of patients that you're seeing?
We try not to. We try not to. It's if you go strictly by finances, yeah, these are visits pay more and they're more valuable as far as the books go. But some of these patients coming in for routine care, they're loyal patients who've been patients of yours for a long time.
Mm,
And so I don't think it's fair to shun those people because you may not feel it's important or it may not be as profitable when in fact what their need is just as big as the person who comes in with bad ankle arthritis.
yeah,
And so again, what we try to do is get help from our team. We try to expand hours. I've got some docs that'll say I'll work through lunch until to grab an extra 4 people, or I'll work a little later, I'll come in a little earlier. And so we try to work from that standpoint until you can stop the bleeding.
Good answer. I must have been just so mean when I had my business.
Well,
No,
there's different strategies though.
oh no, it worked. Like our routine ones, the patients that came in, if they had regular appointments, always booked in on a regular basis, yeah, they come in, they book again for 2 months' time. Yeah, those people always were looked after. With those ones that would just ring up out of the blue, have been in for
Yeah.
9 months. I know you told me to come in 2 months, but it's been 9 months. And we go,
And now it's an emergency.
now it's emergency. We go, well, you're going to have to wait because we only have these limited amount of time that you can get in. But yeah,
Yeah,
I think everyone's got to work it on what works best for them. So
yeah,
you have a
absolutely.
kinder heart than me.
Well, you try. I'm one of those people. I don't want to lose any patient.
Yeah.
I don't want some of the patients. I want all the patients. And so you just have to get creative with what you do.
So and routine foot care, you do everything. Your clinics do everything from foot and ankle surgery all the way through to cutting someone's toenails.
Yep, everything in between there.
So and I like that. I like the scope that you actually do in America, where you do when you say everything, you do everything.
Yeah, and it also keeps it interesting because I have patients who they'll come in with peripheral neuropathy and they'll want treatment for that. The next one comes in and my feet are cold and they have vascular disease. And then next one, it's a routine care person. Next person's got melanoma on their skin. Next one has a broken ankle.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's not like I'm in a clinic seeing the exact same thing all day long. I could go through 20 or 30 different diagnoses in a day. And so for someone who likes to keep things interesting, I think it's great.
Yeah. And the other part too, with your routine foot care, a lot of your routine foot care patients who may be elderly may require some form of surgery at some stage in the future as well, and vice versa,
So many
which
of
is the
them.
difference between America and Australia as well. Because in Australia, majority of podiatrists aren't doing foot and ankle surgery. So if they're doing
Yeah.
routine foot care, they're doing routine foot care. If somebody needs surgery, they're going to refer them on to somebody else who's going to do the surgery.
Yeah. And for us, we get to keep the relationship with the patient.
Yeah.
And they've known me for 10 years. So when I say they need surgery, all of a sudden they're like, well, I've been seeing him for 10 years. He's taking good care of me. He must know what he's talking about. I don't have to sell them on something different because I've been selling them on myself for years.
Yeah. This is what I like about talking to podiatrists in different countries. And that's why the feedback I've had from people who have listened to the podcast from day dot all the way through, may not listen to every episode, but listen to a lot of them. And they say they've learnt so much, like listening to you talk about how you run your practice. And because it's done differently in America, it's a different sort of mindset, but there's so many of the parts of the mindset that carry over, doesn't matter what country you're in.
Yeah, and a lot of it can become very transparent. And I love talking to people from other countries too, and even listening to your podcast. And just, again, there's little things, and you go, I can make that work here.
Yeah.
Or if I tweak this a little bit, it'll totally fit into what we're trying to do.
Yeah. I remember when I wrote my book, It's No Secret There's Money in Podiatry. And I remember one of the first reviews I got through, everything 5-star reviews, 5-star reviews, got this 1-star review, some dude in the UK, but that was fine. He was obviously bitter and twisted. But then I got a couple of 3-star ones from America, and they were saying this similar thing. Oh, yeah, the book's okay, but it's written for Australian podiatrists, not American podiatrists. And I went, really? I said, really? Talking about the 6 pillars of marketing, talking about your competitive point of difference. There was nothing I really wrote in that was just directed at Australians. It was covering business of podiatry. Yet, probably some of the terminology I used, they saw that as pure, that would only work in Australia, not in America.
Yeah, but you don't pick up a cookbook and get mad because you don't like every single recipe in there. You look at it and you go, I like this one, I like this one, I like this one's not for me. And so with any lecture, with any book, you pick the best parts of it. You
Mm,
obviously don't do every single thing in every single book, but you pick the pieces that work well with you. So to me, even if you get a few things out of that, then that can be really powerful. You don't have to have everything work for you.
no, that is true. So, Patrick, before we wrap up, do you have any final words of wisdom for your 6th episode of the Podiatry Legends podcast?
Any other words of wisdom? Invest in your staff. I've been over the years, I've had a lot of different staff members. We have over 120 staff right now, including our doctors. And there's a lot of people, I've owned the practice 10 years now, who have come through the ranks and people who've been with me 6, 7 years now. And they become very key people you can rely on. They become people who kind of push the good culture.
Yeah.
And people who at times they do more for you than you'll ever know behind your back. They talk people off the ledge for you. They help train new people, and they do stuff without having to ask. And they become really big cheerleaders for you. And so if
Mm.
you can develop those people and continually challenge the ones who want to be challenged to get better, they can be some of your greatest resources.
Yeah, that's a fantastic tip, because I know some podiatrists who probably don't invest enough time, energy, money into their team, and it's reflected in their business.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I think it's great. And I'll just point out that the McEneaney empire of podiatry clinics, you're one of the largest groups in Illinois, in the state of
Yeah,
Illinois.
second biggest in Illinois.
Oh, yeah, second biggest.
Yep.
Oh, so I've only had the second biggest person on the podcast. No, I'm only joking. So I can say I got my hat from the second biggest podiatry empire in Illinois from the owner.
Yeah. And we do it by the time this airs. I just signed a contract the other day. We'll be opening clinic number 17.
Oh, how many do you have to have before you be the biggest?
I'll have to check. I don't know. I would have to check.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I'm only joking. So, Patrick, I want to thank you for coming back on. I always enjoy our conversations. When I caught up with you in Chicago, which is a beautiful city if no one's been there. If you haven't visited there, it's a place you've got to visit. It's cold, but it's nice. And yeah, I want to thank you for coming back on, sharing your wisdom. And yeah, I love talking with you. So it's been good.
Well, thanks for having me.
Well, I hope you enjoyed listening to Patrick as much as I did. It's always fun. Like I said, this is our 6th episode, but I spent some time with him in Chicago. We went to an NFL game. There was a lot of laughs. But I just want to share a couple of my key takeaways from this episode that I think are worth highlighting. The first thing is, if you do take over another clinic, it's just be patient with the change. When you're acquiring that new clinic, just make the changes gradual, and I think that will help retain the staff and also preserve the clinic's reputation, because if it's already got a good reputation in town, you want to maintain that. You don't want to just crush it overnight. The second biggest takeaway was invest in people, because the team members who feel supported and valued often become your biggest advocates and assets of the business. They're the ones that are going to talk about where they work when they're outside of work. And when they do talk about it, it's always going to be positive. And the third thing I want to share, which I think is really important, is always be recruiting. Always be in recruitment mode. Dig the well before you need the water. As we mentioned, when you're at events, be talking to other podiatrists. Build relationships. The stronger the relationships you have in the podiatry profession, the better it is going to be for your business career long term. So I hope you get something from those takeaways. I would recommend going back, listening to this episode again. I would also recommend noting down the other episodes that Patrick's been on this podcast, which was episode 48, episode 74, episode 108, 214, and 279. Okay, I want you to look after yourself, look after your family, and I will be talking to you again next week. Okay, bye for now.